there's an amazing world of things going on in there that would take years to, you know, explore properly. So sometimes it might just be, right, this synth I haven't explored properly, so I'm going to reread the manual and just experiment with that for a week and go, oh, it makes these really amazing textures when I do this or something, and go, right, I can make a whole series of songs based on this. This is my bedroom studio that I've set up. This is where I do all my music stuff, or probably 90% of it. Yeah, I do other stuff sort of out in the field, like field recording and stuff, and a little bit of work at other studios, but this is the bulk of it. After high school, I sort of didn't play anything. I lost interest, I suppose, in playing guitar. I started, actually, hip-hop was a big influence that started the crossover to electronic music for me. So in probably late high school, became very into hip-hop music, and yeah, began shortly after high school probably messing around with Acid Pro, which was the first audio workstation that I got for my computer. I actually got a computer just purely to make music on. I didn't have one before that. More recently I've sort of been trying to build some tracks up together for an album or for some sort of release. Yeah, I've got a lot of material, but it's hard to sort of put them all into like an album's worth of stuff into one category. I've just been trying to spend a lot of time, not try and rush anything, and just focus on detail. That's one of the things that the last couple of years I've really felt the need to push towards more and more detail, better clarity with stuff, better space in the music, just really try and focus on the tiny details of music. I think for me it's important to sort of work towards something with a bit of structure, otherwise I am all over the shop. So delving into different sort of styles and experimenting with building software instruments, and you know, I used to do a bit of circuit bending and stuff like that. There's all these things that I can get lost in, and doing that's really fun and important, I think, creatively, but it means that you're never sort of working towards a finished sort of whole thing. A lot of the time when I start out a piece of work, I'll start with a texture, whether it's an ambient texture, it might be a percussive element, it might even be something as simple as a kick drum, you know. I'll always sort of start with one sound, like do a bit of sound design till I get something that inspires me and go, right, this either has a certain feel that I'm sort of thinking in my head, or maybe it's just a cool sound, and I think, how can I use this? And then I'll go about layering things over the top of it, just experimenting with things that work well with it. And once I collect a whole bunch of sounds, then I go, okay, now let's look at how we can use it as a composition. So take bits out. Yeah, there might be one texture that I'm building everything around, but I might end up taking that texture out because it doesn't sort of work as well as the other sounds. So this is a piece that I've finished, probably fairly recently. I'll just play a little bit here. It's hard to see on a screen this small, there's sort of a lot going on, but all the colours are different audio channels or different tracks. I can't remember what I started out with in terms of what sounds it began with, and quite possibly you'll see there's a whole bunch of tracks up here that they're not armed, and they're just audio tracks that I've taken out or used to create a sound and then routed it into another track and done something completely different with it. So all of my sessions have this bunch of tracks at the top of the session that are not even being used anymore. Generally I have this thing in mind where I'm trying to create something that sounds like it's evolving. Like, I like the sound of machines and mechanical sort of stuff, but I like it to have like an organic feel. So I do a lot with granular synthesis. It's just a really nice technique to get lovely sort of morphing textures going on. So it's basically cutting a sound up into tiny little bits and doing all sorts of things with those little chunks of sound, and you can get some very, very out there sort of sounds going on with it. You can completely change the sound of whatever your audio is to the point where it's unrecognizable. In almost all my work, I tend to play around a lot with the drums to generate sounds through granular processing. So I'll often, once I've made a simple drum beat, so say just kick, hats and snare, I'll copy a loop of that, for example, and just load that into a granular sampler and basically just have it playing alongside the track and assign controllers here to a whole bunch of different parameters and just be recording while I'm just manipulating it on the fly. So I might duplicate parts of the track out for 10 minutes and just play away for 10 minutes, just tweaking everything, and then go back through, and I might only snip out a couple of seconds of really amazing sort of bits in there and use those. So I'll end up doing that a number of times, doing a whole bunch of different passes, just processing everything quite heavily, and then tediously go through and snip out bits that are really nice. Also, I'll find field recordings of whatever, water or somebody walking over leaves or something, or somebody eating an apple. Anything, like Foley sounds are really good, tearing paper, that sort of stuff, and use those in granular synthesizers or granular samplers, and you can just make some very nice percussive or clicky, grindy sort of sounds from nice natural elements as well. But I think some of it comes down to actually having your source sounds as an organic recording. Something that's bird sounds or atmospheres of a certain place, and using that as a base to work from, and processing it so heavily that it becomes not natural anymore, but it has beautiful tone, texture. I suppose with my composition, with my music, I'm aiming to sort of make an experience, like an immersive type experience in a way. And often you get sort of visual things coming up from people's music who do that really well. So I always try to do as much of a visual type piece as I can, if that makes sense. So making something that feels like you're experiencing it rather than just sound that's going on in the speaker. My own material is, I see it more of an experiment, an ongoing experiment really, and it doesn't matter to me whether I'm working towards a certain thing with something in mind or whether I'm just doing sound design for just the sake of playing around with sound. It doesn't matter. What I intended to do, I could end up on an entirely different path, and most of the time I do, and I think that's a good thing. So I don't like time frames. I'd like to be able to spend 2 years making one piece of music if I want to. And I often find you get better results. You don't look back on your work and say, I wish I had have done this with it. It's sort of like, well, this has got to the point where I'm just satisfied and I'll let it be, and it's good. You feel like you can complete things. A big part of it bases itself around open source sort of software, all free stuff, things that people use, and all input towards making it better, recycled sort of stuff. And in a way that's reflected in the music that I make. I feel like my music, the attitude I have towards the way I compose and do things without time frames, if I get a collective of stuff together that's ready for a releasable purpose, I just want to put it there for people to access if they want it. No money involved, not even sort of donation things. It's just like it's there if you want to have a look at it or experience it. I have benefited and been inspired by so much of it that I want to give that back to anyone who will appreciate it.